Welcome to the You at Your Best podcast. I'm your host, Morgan. Before we get into the episode, let me give a little bit of an introduction for anyone who's new. If you like listening to someone process life in real time, or you are neurodivergent, an overthinker, a perfectionist, or maybe feel things deeply, this is the podcast for you. This is a non-professional, very human podcast about choosing authenticity over performance. My goal is to remind you to always come back to yourself. I talk about very deep things. I don't avoid vulnerability, but I trust you to know what resonates, what feels safe, and what might be too much for you right now. And I also share a journal prompt at the end of every single episode to help you think. So join me if you want to create a life that actually feels like you, so that you can become you at your best. All right, let's go ahead and get into this week's episode. Hello, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. This week's episode is going to be about things that I'm currently obsessed with, very random things. Last week I made a fun episode, kind of sharing that my brain is really intense and sometimes exhausting. This week I want to talk about how my brain is intense, but how it also notices the beauty in everything. This episode, the core theme is really just about romanticizing life and really paying attention to the small things that you enjoy. While I'm recording this episode, it's only June 17th, and I usually do 3 episodes a month, but since the timing is a little bit off this month, I decided to go ahead and create a 4th episode for this month and then take my break after this week. I've just been in a really creative headspace here lately, and I've been really wanting to create a lot of things, make podcast episodes, but specifically making funner episodes, so I thought it was perfect to make a second fun episode of this month. This episode talks a little bit more about my personal life. I really don't talk about my personal life on this podcast at all, partially because of boundaries, but also because I really struggle with small talk in that way. So I just kind of get straight into the episode without talking about what's going on, like with my daughter, or my friends, or like my boyfriend, or like anything like that. I kind of keep that stuff very private. This episode leans a little bit more into talking about that while still keeping those boundaries that I've kind of naturally created. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the episode. I have a list of some random things that I've just been super obsessed with. So the first one is finding an outfit that perfectly matches my current mood or my current situation. Here lately, I've been loving wearing baggy jeans with a tight top and then like chunky shoes on days where I need to feel more grounded and I'm maybe spiraling a little bit more or struggling more with my mental health. But then on days where I feel playful and excited, I tend to go for more like romantic style outfits with feminine shoes. It's just really fun getting dressed for how I currently feel, and it feels like my style is becoming very integrated as I heal. I guess my outfits are just kind of like an external representation of my nervous system, and my style very much represents my inner world here lately. That's why it feels so integrated, because it's not just how it looks, it's more about how I feel in that moment, even if it doesn't look amazing. The next one is gold jewelry. I used to wear silver all the time, and I actually have a neutral skin color. It's not warm or cool, so I can wear gold or silver and look fine. But here lately, I've been really leaning into gold because it feels more like me in this current stage of my life. But in the past, like a couple years ago, especially before I had my daughter and a little bit after I had her, I was wearing silver all the time. And I think I'm finding myself like starting to enjoy silver again. It's so weird because I feel like everything with me, like this episode is supposed to be fun and light, but it's going to be existential a little bit. That's just who I am. But I feel like everything with me is so integrated, and it has to do with everything. Like how I physically express myself has everything to do with how I'm feeling on the inside. And here lately, I've been really finding myself reaching back for the old version of me from like 2023 and 2022. I've talked about those years on this podcast so many times at this point. Those years were very hard for me, but I forgot for so long that despite those years being so hard, they were also genuinely so happy, and I was finding myself so much. I already knew my personal style at that point. So I'm like kind of starting to alternate between gold and silver jewelry, but at this moment I still prefer gold. And the next one is writing poems while listening to music. Doing this has helped me process and integrate emotions more than anything. I just find it so therapeutic. And the other day I was sitting out on my porch And I was listening to Olivia Rodrigo's new album, and the last song on the album, Cigarette Smoke, I listened to it, and at first I was like, I don't understand why this makes me feel so deeply, because I haven't been through a really intense breakup, like a really intense romantic breakup. So I was like, why do I relate so much to this song? Why am I feeling so many emotions whenever I listen to it? And I just like really dissected that. And there was like a situation with a friendship breakup, and I realized that that was what it was about. So I wrote an entire poem while that song was just playing, and I released so much of that situation, and I wrote a poem finally from my perspective. And something that I haven't been talking about, I'm actually writing a poetry book. I've been writing it for, I want to say 3 months at this point. I've noticed that my writings are like very direct and just say things as they are. I have a really hard time creating a pretty picture to describe a situation. I just want to talk about the situation and leave it at that, which has made my poetry kind of reflect the same as like the Insta poetry with like Rupi Kaur. So I've been really obsessed with her here lately, and reading her poems have really helped me realize that I can be a writer. I am just as creative as people who write poems that have this extreme amount of imagery and stuff like that. And my poems deserve to be seen by the people whose brains are wired like mine, if any of that makes sense. So that's what I've been really obsessed with. One of the things I've been really obsessed with here lately. The next one is cozy things and romanticizing life. This is the part where I'm going to talk a little bit more about my personal life. Some of the things that I've been currently romanticizing is my toddler's nighttime routine, and just like my routine with her in general throughout the day. I stay at home with her while my boyfriend goes to work throughout the week. Sometimes it can be really hard being at home all day with a toddler. So I've been really focusing on romanticizing that, and what can I do to make everyday motherhood fun for me and for her. Some things that we've been doing just off the top of my head because I didn't write them down. She's been really obsessed with reading here lately, but she won't let us read the words on the book. She likes it whenever we like look at a book and then we'll point at something and then name it. Like if there's an apple, like point at it and say apple. It's so cute hearing her say all the words and hearing her try to say something that she doesn't know how to say yet. Another one is like watching comfort shows or comfort movies with her. I love laying on the couch and cuddling with her throughout the day. Me and her do this quite often. Whenever her and I are both really overwhelmed or overstimulated and we just need a second while we watch something like Bluey or Strawberry Shortcake, or she's been obsessed with Peppa Pig here lately. Weirdly, I've been kind of obsessed with Halloween movies, so we've been watching those a lot. I love doing that, like with the window open and us just laying on the couch, being cozy, all cuddled up. It makes me feel genuinely so happy and so grateful for the life that I have. And me just taking that moment to pause and stay away from my phone and all of my thoughts about my own inner world or like my podcast or my social media. It's really nice being able to separate those two things. The next one is dates with my boyfriend. We don't have a lot of money here lately because we're saving, so we don't have a lot of time to just go out on dates to places together, but every single day we make an effort to meet at least one of the other person's needs because we're both very busy, and we can sometimes fall into this trap of like we're kind of like roommates and we're not really existing together, which is fun and great. I love that we have our independence because in the past we were so bonded that I was so anxiously attached to him that I couldn't be away from him. But sometimes we can fall into that trap of not spending time together whenever we could or using our free time on our own things. So every single day we've been focusing on like trying to do one thing for each other, even if it's something as simple as like he loves getting back rubs, so I rub his back, or him letting me sit there and talk about random things and ramble on, or me letting him do that about work and just debrief and talk about how exhausted he is or anything like that. Like just meeting one need each. And also he's obsessed with video games, so we've been playing this game called I think it's Final Fantasy, but I can't remember. I always get the two names mixed up and I can't think of the other thing. It's a Disney game, but we've been playing it together and it's been so fun and relaxing. And weirdly, like I hate video games. I always have. Like I love watching people play games, but I am not creative enough in that way. My creativity is the complete opposite of that kind of thing, so I genuinely can't do it myself. But with this game, it's been really fun playing it and being challenged and getting frustrated and just seeing his face light up whenever I'm playing something that he genuinely enjoys. That's been really fun. We've also been watching movies together at night, like coming into our bedroom after our daughter goes to sleep and just cuddling and watching a movie, usually a funny movie. We have a really hard time deciding on a movie that we want because him and I have such different interests. It's so funny that we work so well together whenever we're so different. Going to the movies together, like the movie theater, it's so fun. And even just like having days together with our daughter, like going outside and sitting in the grass and all three of us like looking up at the clouds and pointing at the clouds or the trees. And my daughter loves talking to trees. Trees are like her best friend. So talking to the trees with her, just like letting her run around and all three of us just being together and being present, or going to the park, or going to like a fast food restaurant and just sitting down together and eating. Although it's been really hard because being in public with a toddler is exhausting. But we still try to do it just to make it fun and just to enjoy life, because life can get really boring and miserable with a toddler. So sometimes you have to make an effort to make it more fun and to make it where the parents can enjoy it too. And with like everything that I have going on in my life, people may be listening to this and being like, Morgan, you're in burnout recovery and you're doing all of these things, but all of these things are what make burnout recovery actually worth it. And having a neurodivergent coded brain means that I am becoming really good at balancing my different interests and focusing heavily on one thing for a couple of days and then another thing for the next couple of days so that it doesn't exhaust me. And I actually learned what this was. Interest cycling, I think. For a neurodivergent brain, interest cycling is actually one of the best things you can do. And I'm actually going to look up the definition just to explain it better because I'm having a little bit of a hard time explaining it. Okay, it says interest cycling, also known as the neurodivergent passion cycle, is the pattern of intensely focusing on a specific hobby or topic, exhausting the initial burst of curiosity, abandoning it, and then eventually returning to it or moving to a brand new obsession. So it's like basically you're just cycling your interests, and this is why like neurodivergent people can have so many different interests and not burn themselves out. The next one is social media. I talked a bit about this in my last episode about how I've been recently moving away from having my podcast be the center of my brand and my Instagram to me being the center of it. So I've been really into posting random pieces of my personality while trying to frame it all to match my specific brand and trying to understand a little bit about like what my brand is. I've also been watching a lot of this YouTuber called by Kayleigh. I'll link her in the show notes if anyone wants to look at her channel. She teaches about how to properly market yourself and create an authentic brand. I have been learning a lot from her about like how I want to make my brand and making it authentic but still recognizable, if that makes sense. I am also someone who has opposing sides to almost all parts of me, and I've kind of talked about this a little bit already. Like, for example, I am both awkward and confident. I'm both intense and soft. I'm both a family person and an independent person, grounded and chaotic. So I've been learning how to take those things that feel like they're constantly contradicting each other and build them into one cohesive brand. And now that I've talked about my poetry book, that has been a part of it too. That's why I'm moving more towards Morgan Sneed instead of You at Your Best. Honestly, I sometimes feel kind of dumb for caring so much about this stuff. Like when literally hardly anyone follows me. I think at this time I have like 60 followers on Instagram. But either way, it's fun. And I'm learning so much about what makes me authentically magnetic and just really leaning into who I am instead of trying to place myself into a certain box. So creating my brand has been kind of figuring out exactly who I am and making that based off of that. The next one is makeup. So I used to be a huge makeup girl, and to a certain extent I still am, but makeup for me ever since becoming a mom has changed so much. I'm at a point in my life where I don't have to, or honestly don't really want to do a full face anymore. I still like it sometimes, but it's just different now. And there's also the fact that I can't afford the expensive makeup that I used to love. So I have naturally started caring a lot less about it. But recently I've been getting back into it. And just finding cheaper drugstore products that work well for me has been really fun. Like doing TikTok research on what products work well on my very dry, sensitive skin and aren't $40 a bottle. Because I used to spend so much money on makeup. Like, it's honestly embarrassing how much money I wasted on makeup. And I've been doing the same thing with skincare too. So I've just been really getting back into like learning about makeup and how it works for me in this current stage of motherhood where I don't have a lot of time to do my makeup, but I still want to enjoy doing it. And the other day I was outside with my toddler. She was playing on our back porch. She has like this little water thing that she plays in. She was playing in that while I was doing my makeup, and it was just so relaxing. There were times where she was climbing all over me, but I recorded a video for it and I used it for the background of a clip from one of my podcast episodes. So I've been like, with social media, I guess I'll talk a little bit about that again. I've been taking everyday normal moments and turning them into content. And that is what's made social media so easy for me and come so naturally in a way that it never really did before. And ever since I started doing that, I have been posting almost every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, and it's genuinely really fun. I just hope I don't become burnt out on it because I'm like so obsessed with it that I'm scared I'm going to, but I don't think I will. I don't see that happening. The next one is music. I've always loved music. I think that's been pretty obvious on my podcast, but here lately, it feels like my music taste is becoming very integrated, just like with almost everything else about me. My music taste contradicts itself a lot. Like, I love Deftones and Taylor Swift, and it like feels like it makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense to me. So I've been finding myself listening to both, sometimes within the same playlist. And I actually created a playlist for this podcast, and it has a little bit of that too. It's linked in my link tree if anyone wants to hear it. And then another thing with music, I really love making playlists. I have been so obsessed with it here lately, just making playlists for different versions of myself. Also, I have this weird thing where I get obsessed with a certain song or a certain artist, and I spend days hyperfixating on them. Ever since I can remember, I've always been a huge fangirl. I was like this with One Direction, with Nessa Barrett, with Sleeping with Sirens, with Taylor Swift. Right now it's Olivia Rodrigo, and it like changes, but I feel like for me, I never have a favorite song. I don't have an all-time favorite song or an all-time favorite artist because it always changes. But at the same time, I kind of always go back to the same artist. I really stay within the music that I listen to. I have a really hard time listening to new music. Okay, the next one is photography. I feel like this episode is just kind of becoming the special interest episode. But ever since my daughter was born, I have been obsessed with photography, mostly because I wanted cute milestone pictures of her, but we couldn't afford to pay someone to take pictures of her. So I became really obsessed with that. And then also there's just like the fact that my boyfriend has always taken cute pictures of me. I've always really loved getting dressed in a cute outfit and him taking pictures of me. It was always me that was teaching him what to do. And our friend Dylan, he takes our family pictures, and whenever he takes those pictures, I'm telling him what to do. So even though they're taking the pictures, I'm still kind of the photographer, the director of it. It's all me that has created all of the pictures that we have. I genuinely enjoy it so much. It's a way of romanticizing life for me, like capturing random moments, editing pictures, and just taking pictures of things that I find really pretty. All of that is just something that I have always really loved, and is another thing that I circle back to with my interest cycling. Okay, the last one I'm going to talk about, and I promise I will be very brief with this one. It's Japan, specifically our trip to Japan. My boyfriend and I are going with his cousin and her husband in December. So me and him have both been really obsessed with learning about that and finding places that we want to visit, trying to figure out our personal style, like how to integrate our personal style into Japan in winter because it's very cold. And honestly, we're both really terrified of the trip, but also so excited. So we've been learning a lot about that. So Japan has naturally become a special interest for both of us for that reason. And I don't talk about him a lot, but him and I are so different, but so similar at the same time. I think that's what helps our relationship be so grounded. We both have very ADHD coded brains. I'm not going to say we have ADHD because neither of us have been diagnosed yet. And there's a whole story behind that. Just trying to be diagnosed as an adult is really hard. But because of how our brains are wired, him and I have a lot of special interests and a lot of really intense special interests that we sometimes can't pull ourselves out of. But for him and I, we're not like one is neurodivergent and one is neurotypical. We're both neurodivergent, which makes it really difficult at times. But at the same time, it's just so amazing being with someone who cares so deeply about things in the same way that I do. Even if his interests are completely different from mine, I feel so much respect for how much he cares about certain things. And I think the only shared special interest that we have is our life that we're building together, which I think is the most important one. So like parenting and raising our daughter in the best way possible. We are both very much gentle parents with our daughter. We have never raised our voices at her. We don't use physical punishment ever. That's never even crossed our minds, honestly. We set boundaries. We have a lot of rules with her, but we're also very lenient. And like if she's throwing a tantrum, we're not going to punish her for throwing a tantrum and just like stuff like that. Building a life that we genuinely love, like where we want to live. We talk all the time about how we want to eventually buy a house. So although like him and I are so different, I think what helps us stay together is the fact that we have very similar morals and we have very similar plans for our life and our future together. I didn't mean to talk about that, but I guess that's another special interest of ours, just life in general and romanticizing things and building a life where we're both happy. All three of us are happy. And our family, we are just so close and our home is like so safe. It's felt safer for my boyfriend and I than any other home that we've lived in. We're learning how to build a life that revolves around our family and how our brains are naturally wired. Our family is built on love. Our life is built on love. And that's the biggest accomplishment of my entire life. This week's journal prompt is more for people with neurodivergent coded brains or people who have a lot of special interest. Even if you are neurotypical, it's a very human thing to have a lot of special interests. I want you to write out all of your special interests, really get specific on everything that you genuinely enjoy, everything that you like in your life, everything that you love doing, and then try to utilize interest cycling to help you navigate all of those things so that they don't burn you out. Okay, that's all for today. If something in this episode resonated, share it with a friend who needs a little reminder that they're not alone. If you want more conversations like these, be sure to follow and rate this podcast. Downloading this episode is one of the best ways to help this podcast grow, so be sure to do that. If you want to find me on social media, all of my links are in my link tree in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next Sunday.